Welcome to the push with Nick and KP. This week it will just be Nick. KP is having some technical difficulties with his PC, and he will return as soon as possible. But yeah, so just this week, it will be me, and yeah, let's kick things off with Monday Night Raw, which of course took place in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And the opening segment sees Randy Orton coming down to the ring. And as I'm sure most of us saw coming, ends up being Gunther in the ring. But with some heel antics this week, with Luke Kaiser trying to attack him from behind. Uh, as we so often see, this doesn't work out. Randy, of course, saw it coming, as did I'm sure most of us. And although the numbers game ends up panning out. Um, I think the main takeaways here, just obviously encouraging to promote their match at Bash in Berlin, and Gunther ends up calling Randy Orton a one-trick pony with his RKO, and says, "From the RKO you gave me last week, you just made this very personal." This is a pretty good opening segment. I don't, nothing, not reinventing the wheel or anything by any means here. But yeah, did a good job of, reminding us that we have this matchup coming. And yeah, of course, Randy Orton's over as always. So that's always good to see. Next, we end up having Sheamus and Pete Dunne. As most would expect here, another banger. Of course. Pete Dunne working overtime this week, a match on Monday Night Raw and the next night on NXT. So personally, I love to see it. Big fan of Pete Dunne, and the sky's the limit for him. Very unique style, and I think yeah, just getting more and more looks of what he's capable of. But yeah, so surprising to hear for me is Sheamus defeating Pete Dunne. Um, you know, uh, it happens, but yeah, I was surprised to see him winning. And then Pat McAfee, of course, mentioned this evening as well. This is his last Raw due to football season starting, and that's a great segue into Sheamus, who he announces will be a guest pick on their college football set in Dublin, Ireland, um, as of recording yesterday. So yeah, that was fun to see, and if you didn't get a chance to check that out, absolutely too. Um, Next, we have a match of Maxine Dupree versus Ivy Nile. We saw the kind of fallout last week. Ivy Nile walked up to Maxine Dupree, asked her if she wants to join her family. Maxine stays loyal to hers, and of course, that doesn't end up going well. Um, I I think they might have both been in the ring. The official start of the match, maybe 30 seconds. Could have been a little less, could have been a little more. But regardless, this ends up being, as you see on the screen here, an attack by the White Six. Um, yeah, pretty much nothing to say about Ivy Nile or Maxine Dupree, and just another instance of the White Six showing a domination. Next, we get a CM Punk promo, who makes his way to the ring, and long story short, he claims to be the Taylor Swift for men, which got a good chuckle out of that. And then to, I guess, attempt to scare Drew McIntyre, I guess, would be the main, uh, I guess, goal here. Anyways, he offers a strap match, so he can, quote, whip this bitch, um, and in Berlin. And so yeah, that's, I guess, isn't, I think he used the words, "Are you scared?" Unless you're too scared. Of course, Drew McIntyre absolutely going to take an opportunity, and he does. Um, he comes out and he says, Drew McIntyre says, "I have a question. I'm 100% serious. Have you started drinking?" And of course, he accepts the match. Yeah, I'm not sure what CM Punk's angle was in that. Thinking the strap match was going to scare him off. Using the almost like heel tactic, like unless he's chicken. Um, so yeah, that was, of course, as seen on the picture, Drew was more than happy to accept, and once again remind CM Punk of the bracelet that he still is in possession of. I suppose CM Punk's logic here is, well, you can't run away this time, but haven't really seen that. We haven't seen the running away for a while, at least that I can recall. Um, so yeah, that was interesting. And personally, I'm not a huge fan of strap matches. We don't see them often, so I guess there's that. Um, but yeah, this will be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how they work this one. Um, but yeah, we get the next chapter, official chapter is now set in stone. Bash in Berlin, CM Punk, Drew McIntyre in a strap match. Next, we get the New Day and Odyssey Jones versus the Final Testament in the segment that never seems to end. Um, as I'm sure most saw coming, the New Day and Odyssey Jones defeat the Final Testament. Um, yeah, I don't feel like there's too much to get across here. Cole mentioned that Woods hasn't won the championship, so I think we're still kind of laying the groundwork there for a potential heel turn. But you know, I don't think Woods is you know uh, quite as wary of the whole thing. He's not. You don't see the tension there as much as you did. Um, but it was still there. It was still there. They won the match, and it wasn't as bad as it was, but it's still there. So I think that's eventually where they're going. Um, it's just a matter of when, I suppose. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. Um, Final Testament continues to be not the strongest, not booked the strongest, but felt like they were finally making some momentum, and then Odyssey Jones and joins a New Day, and now it's not much going in the right direction for the Final Testament. Next up, we have what starts as the Miz versus Big Bronson Reed. Um, Miz playing the hero here, saying, I'm not sure that I want to fight Big Bronson Reed, but he took out my friend, R-Truth, so he has to defend him. Um, Miz, of course, is over almost as much as Randy Orton. Both, veterans in the ring and the company, and clearly popular baby faces. Um, yeah, of course, Reed ends up beating the Miz. But I think the main takeaway here and shown on the screen is someone comes up. I don't necessarily know to the aid of the Miz, but he certainly has shown, in the past, always sticking up for the little guy. And I think that's what we're in for here. Big Bronson Reed up against Braun Strowman, and what we will call Battle of the Big Men, meat versus meat. Um, this gave me goosebumps. I thought this was a really cool picture and a really cool scene. Not sure when we're going to get it, but I personally think this is a PLE worthy match. So will we get it at Bash at Berlin? Not entirely sure yet. Um, but I think that certainly has potential. And if I'm hoping Big Bronson Reed gets the win there, but I wouldn't be mad at a feud between the two for a while either. So we'll see where that one goes, and certainly have my eye on that one. Next, we get Damian Priest and Dominic Mysterio in a one-on-one match, which Obviously, Dominic Mysterio, you would think, not too smart, and Pat McAfee and Cole kind of allude to this and what a dumb decision. But that's what ends up happening. Of course, this is the Judgment Day that's involved, much like the Bloodline. We don't get clean finishes, and this is no exception. Just a bunch of stuff happens outside the ring, and the final scene has the Judgment Day standing tall over who's now being known as the Terror Twins. Um, yeah, honestly, I think the Judgment Day kind of did need to be on top because even though they do have the numbers, it was still a struggle over the last couple weeks. Um, Even with the numbers, they were not looking very good. So I think this was the right call. Get the momentum back on their side. After all, it's 5-on-2. But yeah, Judgment Day stands tall here, and yeah, I think in order for the baby faces to get the babyface reaction, the heels have to do heel things, and so I think this was the right call, and you know I don't think it'll be long before we see Damian and Rhea get their revenge. So next we have a triple threat tag team match for the women's WWE Tag Team Championship. And what to me was a surprising upset, I guess we'll call that. The champions retaining that it shouldn't feel like it's an upset, but I feel that it was, and not only the fact that it's a triple threat match with two teams that I feel like have built up relatively well. Um, but yeah, um, Isla Dawn, Alpha Fire get the win here, and you know it's a pretty good match, I think. It feels like the champions here, as kind of mentioned, feel like an underdog, but as a heel is a rare combination. But yeah, I did not expect him to get the win here. I kind of thought we were going to turn the page here, next champion kind of take over, um, but they didn't. And Alba Fire and Isla Dawn kind of working overtime this week as well. They end up having a match on SmackDown that we'll talk a little bit about later. But yeah, this was a good match. One of the best possibly of the night and of the week. This was a fun contest, and I don't think anyone kind of comes out of here looking weak, which I think is the main objective. Um, I can't say that about the other match this week, but for this one, I think all three teams come out looking good. So this was a step in the right direction. Then we get to the main event, which, as discussed in the promo at the beginning of the night, was going to be Randy Orton and Ludwig Kaiser. Um, yeah, this was a good match. It was a good match. Two good workers. Obviously, Randy Orton's a good worker. Everyone knows that. Ludwig Kaiser is quickly showing, he belongs here as well. Um, Kaiser hanging with Orton is that's the rub he needs. Win or lose there. If you hang with him, I think that's a good call. Um, I don't think anyone's surprised with the result. Of course, Randy winning and Gunther getting involved and getting another RKO for his troubles. So yeah, quality main event, and what I felt like was a quality role. So without further ado, let's move on to NXT. NXT starts with the new tag team champions, Chase U, coming to the ring. And this has what quite a short celebration in that Axiom and Nathan Frazier end up coming to the ring and basically claiming that they deserve a rematch. Chase U says, not so fast. You have to beat a couple of our members first. And so they do just that. And that's how the NXT starts. And of course, they win. So they will get their rematch at No Mercy. Next, we have a match between Wendy Chu and Lola Vice. Lola's transformation. I feel like I say this every week, but Lola's kind of face turn has done her absolutely no favors. It didn't feel genuine in the first place, but it certainly hasn't gone in a good direction either because she's kind of lost what I felt like was her best quality was kind of a spunky heel and I don't want to say sassy because that kind of feels like it demeans the character, but she had an attitude about it. Felt like that was kind of the one of the best things she had going for her. And boy, it just feels like there's almost like a shadow of her former self. But we'll see. We'll see where that goes. Wendy Chu obviously getting the win here. I think that was kind of necessary to help continue to build her character. Um, the weird part is Kalani getting involved here. Kalani gets involved, and for reasons, I guess. Obviously they Wendy Chu, Tatum Paxley have kind of been, bothering her and getting on her nerves, but I don't really see the point of her coming in mid-match like that. It's not really a face tactic either. Um, so yeah, that was interesting. Winnie Chu, I think winning is the right decision. I'm just, you know, and I've voiced my opinions on Lola Vice. I'm not the biggest fan of her. I feel like she's a bit overrated. That being said, I feel like she's deserves better than what's kind of been booked over the last month or so with this face turn. I think she needs to go back to heel, back to being a heel, as I feel like it serves her character and just her overall persona much better. Next, we get the Gauntlet match, which Gauntlet Eliminator match, excuse me. And yeah, this was a really good match. I don't feel like anyone kind of came in and looked bad. My only argument for this one would be I think maybe it was cut a little short. Um, it's weird to say that with the six people involved in a match. Um, but yeah, I felt like this was a pretty good match. And the final two contestants, as to not go down the entire list, but it is worth your watch if you haven't seen it. The final two competitors were Jada Parker and Sol Ruka, which I think most people probably would have assumed. Maybe a surprise, but in there. But that's I think that one was pretty predictable, and then that was the final two. I think both of those competitors are worthy of challenging Roxanne Perez at No Mercy. It's Sol Ruka coming up just short, just once again, and Jada Parker getting the win and the right to challenge Roxanne at No Mercy. Yeah, I like this pick. I like Jada Parker. I think she has potential. And I like the idea of this qualifier and that everyone in this match was someone who hasn't challenged for the NXT Women's Championship. So I think I like the idea. I like the concept of it. And no matter who won, we were going to get a fresh matchup. So I think Jada Parker, if she has something to prove at No Mercy, if she can hang with one of the best in Roxanne, I think I think we'll be in for a treat. Next, we get Hank and Tank taking on Gallows and Anderson. I haven't seen a ton of Hank and Tank in the ring, and yeah, based on what I saw here, they certainly seem like they could be a legitimate contender. Obviously, beating Gallows and Anderson maybe doesn't mean what it did at one point in their career, but regardless, you know, nothing to ignore by any means. Yeah, Gallows and Anderson pretty upset after the match, and I kind of getting protected, Hank Tank, by Gallows by the security team, and Gallows and Anderson celebrating with the commentary team was a pretty funny moment. Um, I think this is probably the first chapter of of a book here, with Gallows and Anderson clearly upset with and feeling like they did not deserve that loss there. So I think we're far from seeing the end of this, but a quality match nonetheless. And next we get No Quitter Catch Crew in the ring celebrating um, their latest victory, and Ren Sinclair kind of starting to be the mouthpiece here for Charlie Dempsey and No Quitter Catch Crew. She basically calls out a new challenger. She says, anyone who's willing, we're ready for you. Um, and funny moment there is the one who answers the call is Obafemi, in which Brendan Sinclair immediately says, "I'm sorry," which I think is an appropriate response. Um, I think Brendan Sinclair is great in this role, and it kind of gives more personality. No quarter catch crew, and but yeah, Obafemi comes out to the ring. This, of course, does not come to fruition because Tony D'Angelo and the D'Angelo family comes out and says pretty much no thank you, goes after Oba and take down Oba, which that's quite a statement in itself. Um, I think, we've seen this kind of tease over the last few weeks. Um, do we get Oba and Tony D'Angelo at No Mercy? I don't believe that's been confirmed yet, but I think it certainly makes him a viable competitor. Definitely a statement made there. Personally, I would love to see that matchup. I think I mentioned in previous weeks, I don't see Tony D'Angelo um, beating Oba, but that certainly does not mean that they can't get a few bangers in there in the meantime. And next we get Ashante the Adonis and Dion Lennox. And what is a pretty quick match. Ashante gets the win here with Sweet Chin Music. Um, yeah, I haven't seen a ton of Ashante in the ring for quite some time. Um, personally, I feel like he's very entertaining backstage. His pants and his finisher um, give me Shawn Michaels vibes, which I think is probably what he's going for. And I think with that recipe, you certainly can't argue. I personally like what I saw from him here. Not a ton to go off of, but yeah, I think he has potential, and we'll see where we go from here. Finally, we get to the NXT main event, which shows Joe Hendry, Wes Lee, and Pete Dunne in his second match of the week for the NXT number one contendership for a shot at Ethan Page at No Mercy. Um, Arguably one of the better matches, if not the best match of the week. Um, and I don't think the outcome was too surprising. I have Joe Hendry, who's over as all heck since his return. His debut at NXT, over from TNA, and I think while I think this was a good match, and you know maybe a little overbooked, you of course had Ethan Page come out, and you also had Trick Williams, and you also had the Rascals all kind of involved in the stories of these individuals here. And I think um, that's kind of why the outcome was a bit predictable. And that Pete Dunne has his beef with Trick Williams, and Wesley has his beef with the Rascals. And Ethan Page is just furious at the fact that Joe Hendry is over and doesn't believe he deserves a spot with him in the ring. But after a very good match, that's what we're getting. That's what we're getting. We're getting Joe Hendry and Ethan Page and No Mercy for the NXT Championship. And I think the big question is, are they going to do it? Are they going to let Ethan Page um, lose his title? And what would be a pretty quick run? I don't think a lot of us saw him getting a title in the first place so quickly, especially. But will they let Joe Hendry, who is part of this TNA NXT partnership, will they let him get a title? I think that'll be a huge door being opened if that does end up working. Um, and I'm personally on board. I was a bit skeptical at first. I felt like maybe a flash in the pan, so to speak, as cliche as that is. But Joe Hendry seems to have kind of all the things needed to be a good over guy, especially on the NXT level, and maybe one day on main. Who knows? But yeah, I think this is a big opportunity to prove that this NXT TNA partnership isn't one sided, and I don't think you would get any complaints from the NXT crowd with Joe Hendry winning a title here. At the very, very least, if we have some sneaky finish from Ethan Page, costing Joe Hendry. I think that only improves his success that he's seen lately. So yeah, overall a pretty good NXT. I would argue the best show of the week. Um, and yeah, lots of good stories here, and we're not too far away from No Mercy. So that picture is certainly becoming more clear. Next, we have Friday Night SmackDown, which starts off with, and this is a bit of a pet peeve of mine when they start off with a recap. I understand the necessity of it to remind people that maybe didn't watch the whole show or maybe have forgotten in the short week. But the recap being of the bloodline, obviously no one's going to forget about that. Um, they take a large chunk of time each week. But regardless, once that gets started, we have a Grayson Waller Effect talk show, which welcomes Cody Rhodes to the ring. Cody Rhodes, as he does, takes his time getting down to the ring, and that is quickly cut off by Waller, who says, "Nope, not doing that. This is our show. Let's get this started." Um, I personally love the Waller Effect in the show. I think it's one of the better talk shows we've had. And Waller just has that charisma, and I think it makes anything entertaining. Of course, he's here with Theory, and KO then kind of starts coming out to the ring, and we see Nick Aldis, come out and try to set things right and tell him we need to get the show on the road. Kevin Owens asked if he still has time to go punch in the face with them, to which, of course, Aldis says, make it quick. But yeah, into a quick brawl. Nothing groundbreaking here, but I just find Waller entertaining. So I thought that was pretty good. And him having it live streamed on his Instagram, I think, was a nice touch as well. And yeah, an interesting note here was on the KO turning heel package, and the many times that he's done it. And personally, I am on board with a heel turn here. Was mentioned was Chris Jericho, which I thought was interesting. One of my favorites in WWE. But yeah, that was an interesting choice, and being picked there. Next, we have LA Knight and Santos Escobar. I'm not sure why, but we did. These two are set to are set to go one-on-one for the United States Championship at Bash in Berlin. So why it was decided that they should have a one-on-one match tonight, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, LA Knight gets the win here, and what's a decent enough match. I'm just more. My main takeaway is just more so, kind of why I feel like it kind of takes away from their match here in just a couple weeks. But regardless, it is what it is. LA Knight gets the win, and I assume Santos will get some kind of revenge next week. Maybe we have a rematch, which will be even more strange, but I'm not sure what else they'll do in the meantime, or why they had this match to begin with. Next, we have a 6-woman tag match with Naomi, Bianca Belair, and Jade Cargill. And this time they're up against Alba Fire, Isla Dawn, and Blair Davenport. We continue to see this kind of rivalry, I guess we'll call it. Don't feel like a ton is going on. Feels like kind of rinse and repeat each week. But anyways, this is what we have tonight. And earlier I mentioned Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, they're having an impressive win for the tag titles on Monday Night Raw. I feel like that was a step in the right direction, getting them some for the heel champions not to have any wins felt a bit weird. So that was a good win to get them under their belt, excuse me. And then I felt like we kind of took a step back. For every step forward is 2 steps back, I guess you could say. Anyways, Naomi, Jade, and Bianca end up winning here because, of course, Jade and Bianca are not going to win. And it's still a strange decision that they lost the titles in the first place. But yeah, this match was here. And some fun moments, none that you haven't seen in the other six man or six woman tag match. They have their, they definitely have their favorites and their go-tos. But I think the coolest part here was the face team and Jade, Naomi, and Bianca wearing the Simone Biles kind of tributes. I thought that was pretty cool thing to do. But yeah, faces win again. Heels take another step back. Um, I don't feel like they have much longer Isla and Alba with the belts. Um, they just seem, WWE is doing a good job of building the tag team in the WWE women's division compared to what it was. But I think the biggest weakness in that division now is the champions seemingly, having to buy a win on occasion. You know, one thing for them to not get beat clean every week, but yeah, this was just there, and I think either they're gonna have to lose the title soon, or they're gonna have to start getting some wins by any means necessary. And next we have the tag team champions on the men's side. Tag team championship match. Bloodline versus the Street Profits, who earned their way here. I was excited to see the Street Profits in this match. I thought maybe even if the chance was very slim, that maybe we could see them pull out a victory here, um, with the kind of internal issues of the Bloodline. But right before the match, we see some strange things kind of happening. We see Solo Sikoa tell Jacob Fatu that he has to give up his belt because he's now going to be the enforcer, his enforcer, private enforcer. It's a weird exchange, and now having been removed from that almost about 2 days, I've seen some rumblings that Jacob Fatu was not very happy about this. I kind of get both sides, and hearing there's some heat, if that is true, I kind of get both sides there, and that Jacob Fatu is wearing a boot. Um, I think it's real. He's doing a lot of things with it. The super kicks I think was kind of the final nail in the coffin of the Street Profit. Um, but yeah, that was a weird segment. And you feel bad for the Street Profits. They definitely got screwed over there. Um, but yeah, that was a shame, and I feel like kind of feel the same way I do about DIY, and they came in and they kind of got their asses handed to them as well. So I think DIY and Street Profits kind of have a legitimate reason to both claim rematches here. And so maybe that's where we're headed. Imagine, those three teams in the ring. Maybe that could finally even the advantage. We'll call it the Bloodline Judgment Day advantage, where you constantly outnumber your opponents. It's hard for you to lose, and I think maybe that's where they're headed here. And if we talk about this every week too, if the Bloodline are going to give us the Bloodline be Bloodline at Survivor Series. If I think they need to drop the belts, it's gonna make them feel pretty irrelevant. I feel like, I think I've also made the argument that having it makes the team seem legitimate. But if the Bloodline are going to take up as much time as they do, I think it's important that they give up those tag titles. And I think DIY or Street Profits are both more than capable of handling their own, and both deserve a long reign. I wish they both could have it at the same time. Then in our main event, we have what was mentioned at the beginning in the Waller effect show or Grayson Waller effect, excuse me. Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens versus Grayson Waller and Austin Theory. To no surprise, Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens get the win here. Kevin Owens is actually the one that gets the win with the stunner. Grayson Waller and Austin Theory survive yet another week of being booked and losing. For some reason, they're still here. I think we're going to keep saying that every week. because it deserves to be said. Um, but yeah, my main takeaway here is quality main event. I don't think it was the best one of the week, but I would actually argue the tag match before it was better. But gotta have Cody on the main event, sometimes, right? Um, but yeah, a quality match, and I think the best part was there at the end after the match, Kevin Owens grabbing Cody's title and what looked like, maybe a headshot there to the back of Cody's head, has him quickly handing off the title and climbing the ropes to talk some more trash on their opponent. So I think that heel turn is coming. Just a matter of when, how long we got to wait for it. I personally, I would be okay with it happening before Bash in Berlin, but I feel like it's probably going to happen at Bash in Berlin, cause a disqualification, let Cody keep the title, and then kind of continue that feud. Personally, that's where I feel like we're headed, and I have no complaints from me. Cody and Kevin Owens, as long as they get some decent time before that happens at Bash in Berlin, I'm all for that rivalry and a much deserved uh, heel run. So with that, we finish our recap for WWE Raw, NXT, and SmackDown. And this has been another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. And we will see you next week. I'm not 100% sure KP will be back by then, but if not, we'll do another solo run and continue doing those until he returns. Um, we will continue our build for No Mercy and Bash in Berlin, and we will be back to talk about that next week. Take care, guys.